3, 4 range. Very active. Good. Today, we're going to talk about board development, board recruiting, board onboarding, all the things that help make the board a stronger organization. Boards always have room for improvement. But again, boards are one of those things that seem to always have a lot of criticism associated with it, because if you work in an organization or volunteer in an organization, the group you always like to point fingers at is whoever the leader of the organization is. And the leader of the organization has got to point finger somewhere, and it's usually the board members. And then the board members that are super active have to point their fingers at somebody when something's not going right, and that's the inactive board members. So it's a lot of finger pointing in the nonprofit sector. I've been doing this work 30 years now. I'm proud to say 30 years. I'm about to turn 51. Thank you for nobody believing that, but I am. But this organization ages you. I used to have a lot of hair 5 years ago, and I don't anymore. And if you believe that, then you're used to my jokes already. Actually, I've never had hair. I was voted most likely to recede in high school. So I'm stalling to let more people come in, but I want to get started right away because we only have an hour and there's a lot to cover. There's one subject I do talk a lot about all over the country and all over Canada. It's board development. I've run 4 organizations. I'm running my 4th foundation now. I'm on 2 global boards, and I've been on several active community boards. And so I've seen every side of this. I've seen what works. I've seen kind of how the trends are. I've seen how things are moving. There's a lot more working boards nowadays. A lot of boards are very active in fundraising, very active in event management, very active in programs. And so that's definitely the route I think we're going. There's hardly any boards anymore where people just sit on them and occasionally show up. I think people are just more active in organizations, and that's great to see. So when we talk about board development, whether it's onboarding, training, expectations, believe it or not, board members have expectations associated with them. The best boards, the most engaged boards, the ones that do the best with fundraising, are the ones that have a healthy mix of all these things. And we're going to talk about what's involved in that mix. But right now you got to think of the board that you probably are the most active in currently. I know we have people that raised their hand that said they're on 2 or more boards. But I know there's always one, just like children, your favorite, right? There's always that one that brings you back each and every year. So what does it look like? Does it look like a group of friends hanging out, or does it look like an episode of The Sopranos with like a mob? Like when you go to a meeting, are you stressed out, or you start perspiring? What happens when you're on that board? Or is it just everyone singing Kumbaya, and it's just a lovely afternoon of, enjoying your 6-foot sub together and having shakes? So it's somewhere in the middle. But I do know people that have horrifying board experiences. And they say they felt bullied on boards. They said they felt like they didn't have their voice heard. They felt like they basically were just told what to do, and they weren't part of all the decisions. And so we want to make sure that when we talk about these things, we find what that mix is, because there's not a lot of board development electives in high school or college. So you really learn on the job, and you can read about some of this stuff, but there really is no best practice. It's what I call emerging practices and evolving practices. Some things are really, really great for a while, then they don't work. We learned that during COVID. They just don't work. So we have to change our strategy up and find something that does work. And then we had to change our strategy up again and find something else that worked. And that's the same thing with board development. Who in here is on an organization where you're on the founding board? You're one of the groups that started it, one of the folks. About a third of the room, it looks like, maybe more. We talk a lot about when starting boards, and I work with a lot of starting board organizations because a lot of decisions early on in boards are made from the comfort zone. Like, who do you want to start a board with? You want to start a board with your friends, right? Because they're the people you can rely on, because they're always going to agree with you, always. Or you want to start it with family, because they're always going to agree with you and be reliable. So we got to look at when things happen. Usually when they start it, they start from a place of comfort. But the organizations that I talk to all the time, one of the things they tell me is it's no longer comfortable. And they're like, I think we need to go here, but I don't know if these are the right people. I'm like, of course they're not the right people, because you picked them for a reason when you started. And usually when you pick them, You picked them because it was easy. Now you have to look at what you really need to grow, what you really need to scale. And sometimes those are tough conversations. The hardest thing I have to say to people is sometimes the group that got you where you are today isn't the group that's going to get you where you want to be. And that's a tough conversation. You know how hard it is to fire a volunteer? Anybody ever have to fire a volunteer? It's really difficult. You raise your hand and you put your hand down. Oh, I've done it. It's okay. It's real and it's really uncomfortable. It's like breaking up with somebody you never really dated. It's really awkward. Yeah, you just move the board meeting to a different facility and they show up like, oh, I guess they don't work anymore. No, it's super uncomfortable. And if you've ever had to fire a volunteer, it's not the easiest thing in the world because you start sounding like an 80s couple dating. It's like, oh, it's not you, it's me. I see us going in two different directions. And then you get to a place where it's a lot like this. It's like, I love you, but I want to be free to see other nonprofit organizations. And that's what we call nonprofit humor right there. But that's what we hear organizations hear all the time, because sometimes our board members break up with us. Is anybody in here? Almost everybody is a board member. Is anybody here had to break up with their organization? Raise your hand. Nobody's ever, one person boldly raising their hand. Thank you. A couple of people. One started it, now the dominoes are falling. Anyone just had to say, I've had enough of these guys. I got to walk away. Okay, there we go. Sometimes it takes one bold person, thank you, ma'am, for saying I've broken up with my organization. But sometimes we have to do that. You went back? Oh, you were abused and went back? Typical. It's just like a Lifetime movie, isn't it? But a lot of people feel that way. They're like, you don't wake up not loving the mission. Nobody says that. It's usually the people involved with the organization, or it's the direction it's going, or it's the demands that they're placing on your time, or it's the expectations they're placing on you to fundraise. And things scale and get bigger and get bigger and get bigger, and they're not what they used to be. And it happens. But we laugh about a lot of these things, but these things do cause a lot of stress, and these things cause a lot of anxiety. And they're not easy. I've broken up with several. I took over the Seattle Police Foundation 8 months ago. The exiting CEO was just a ball of stress. She's like, this group is killing me. This is her transition talk. Oh, congratulations and all, but they're killing me. And I'm like, what? This is my pep talk? Great conversation. And she's like, we have too many board members. Nobody's holding them accountable. I've had enough. And she believes in the mission, but just didn't believe in the governance of the organization. And I go, well, I'm going to have to break up with some of these people. She's like, good luck. Well, in the last 8 months, mostly in the last 6, I've facilitated the exit. That's a fancy way of saying breaking up, with 13 board members. And it's all, look at that. It can be done. You guys, 13, we had 35 board members, way too many. I facilitated the exit of 13, and I got about 3 more I need to break up with. So I have a running hit list of breakups I got to do for volunteers. And they volunteer and raise money for me, sort of. And then I got to break up with them. Because the organization is going in a direction where we need people who are engaged at all levels. And I'll even share, later on in the presentation, after about another dozen great jokes, I'm going to share the expectation sheet that I make my board members sign. And a lot of people, when they hear this presentation, does like, I don't believe you do that. Well, now I start to prove that I do it. And then usually immediately after this presentation, I get half a dozen emails saying, can you send that to me in the Word document so I can change the logo and move things around? So we do that. So what I tell people is there is a way to do it, because we know all of our organizations, we want them to continue and be viable and be sustainable. We know that. But then we start looking at how we want them to grow, how we want them to scale. If we're serving, I used to work for Boys and Girls Clubs for 10 years across the country. And after a while, it's like, okay, we serve 200 kids, but how do we serve 250? We're serving 250 kids, how do we serve 400? We have 10 programs in the club, how do we get to 20 programs? So you're always looking to scale and grow and serve more people. I've been a social worker. And it's hard because there's certain things you can do because of the money you have allowed to you. But how can we start looking at ways to provide more services to people? So in this session, I really want to discuss really some of the things that I think are foundational to get you to a point where you can start making those decisions with your fellow board members, the ones you like, and saying, where do we want to go with this organization? How do we want to grow? How do we want to move forward? What does the organization look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Will I still be involved in the organization? Really quick, everybody that's on a board right now, how many of your boards actually have term limits? Raise your hand. Have term limits. That's about half of the room. And the rest have no term limits. It's like a Supreme Court appointment, correct? You're basically like a life sentence. Okay, and if it's court-ordered community service, you don't have to raise your hand. So we talk about these things because they do cause a lot of stress, again, and a lot of anxiety. Most of my stress as an organizational leader, I want to say a solid third of it is around my board. Another third is around programmatic, and probably the other third is around fundraising. Does that sound about right? Kind of a nice mix of what keeps us up at night? Okay. So I want to talk about the things that I think are going to provide the most foundational success. And if there's any questions afterwards, or if there's any follow-up after the session, we can get, more granular and more detailed in other things. But let's talk about primary responsibilities of a board, because when I always talk about primary responsibilities, I always have half a dozen people go, I'm supposed to be doing what? Which is always fun. Biggest myths of what makes a great board, because we all have an idea in our head of what could make your board the best. And you're always usually looking at another organization's board, or you're on their website going, I wish I had these 3 people. And you try to figure out a way to steal them, right? Anybody do that? You've never tried to poach other board members? You guys are nice people. Some of you have like really serious grins on your face. You totally have tried to poach other people. But it happens. Strategies to support recruitment and onboarding, because it's super important. Sometimes we put all of our efforts in recruiting somebody, then we do no onboarding or training. And it was like, oh, it's so great to catch this fish. Now let's throw it in a different pond and see how it does. The importance of board expectations. And I think if there's one thing I want everyone to walk away with, it's like you don't have to have the most stringent or detailed expectations, but hopefully after today, we'll have an idea of maybe finding out what are some expectations you can put on your board to kind of start letting them know the organization that you want to become. And you can scale those expectations up. I've taken over organizations that were literally clinically dead. I mean, I've run 4 organizations, but 3 of them were on life support. So when you take over an organization on life support, meaning I took over one organization and they said, we have 4 months of operating money in the bank. After that, we can't pay the staff. Well, that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And you got to just get to work on what the crisis is. But there's opportunities within your board to let them know what you need out of them when you're in crisis. So, and then what are the 3 superpowers that all board members have? One of my favorite slides. I'll use this slide in almost every presentation. I'll find a way to use it just because I like it so much. So let's talk about the primary responsibilities of a board member. Governance, financial oversight, fundraising, believe it or not, giving and getting, to raise public awareness, and to set the strategic direction. Usually, there's at least 1 or 2 on here that for all my active board members out there, you're like, I'm supposed to be doing what? And these are the 5 things that pretty much are fundamentally the responsibilities of boards. Now, we have board members that seem to get involved in other stuff. They like at an event, they like picking out the tablecloths and the napkins. And they're like, that's how they're going to give back. They're like, I want to do the seating chart. I have those board members. They just want to put people together. But I'm like, let's go back to the 5 that I need you to be doing. Then we can start looking at all the other stuff. So we talk about governance. What are we talking about? We're talking about a couple of things here. Are we making sure that the organization has got all the paperwork it needs to be an up-to-date nonprofit organization? And believe it or not, so many organizations struggle with this because one person's been doing the paperwork forever, and then they go away. And then you realize, oh, wait a second, I just got a notice that we lost our 501c3 designation. We talk about governments. We talk about making sure the people who are on the board realize that they are liable for the organization. If anything happens with the organization, they're the ones that are going to be listed on the court document. Some people don't know that. Financial oversight. It's not just, hey, how much money are we raising at whatever event where everyone likes to show up and I look great. Financial oversight is, what does our fundraising look like throughout the year? What do our expenses look like throughout the year? Do we have money to pay people? Do we have money to hire people? Do we have to lay anybody off? So financial oversight of the organization. In fundraising, the F word of the nonprofit sector. Everyone likes fundraising. Who here loves fundraising? Raise your hand. Loves fundraising? Nobody? Wow, usually somebody loves it. Who here struggles with fundraising? Raise your hand. Struggles? It's tough. All right, that's a pretty good present, half the people. Who here doesn't want to talk about fundraising, but they know the word exists? All right, go. There we go. There's my audience. Denial. That's fantastic. Fundraising is 100% the F word in the nonprofit sector. She wants you to sit here. Season tickets. So we all have to do it. Sometimes we get money from other places, grants, organizations, but we have to fundraise, don't we? Who in the room, raise your hand if you have to fundraise. Raise your hand. You have to do it no matter what. You know you got to do it. You can't avoid it. Almost everybody, thank you. You didn't know it was going to be this aerobic, did you? You have to fundraise. It's a part of what we do. She's got to fundraise so much, her hand's been up forever. I love it. Thank you. You raised your hand, you just kept talking. No, I'm going to call on you. So we have to do it. So we have to understand that I talk to board members all the time. I've had board members that have told me in a meeting, like, yay, fundraising. And then the meeting's over and they'll come up to me, you know, Ian, I'm really not a fundraiser. But you just said in the meeting, yay, fundraise. It's in the minutes that you backed me up on fundraising. So and then I'll have to go through workshops with my board members, like, what are the 5 ways you can fundraise where you don't really know you're doing it? Kind of like for reverse psychology on yourself. What are ways that you can help raise money that are just, a little bit, ease you into it a little bit more until you become more comfortable, because nobody's comfortable with fundraising. It's hard. You guys know there was a famous survey in the 80s and 90s that talked about what are the 5 biggest fears. 5 biggest fears. What do you guys think number 1 was? 5 biggest fears. Sharks and public speaking. Well, for the sake of this presentation, we're going to go with public speaking. Maybe public speaking to sharks, whoever said sharks, but public speaking was number 1. Is anybody here who really is fearful of public speaking? Come on down and tell us about it. No, I'm just kidding. Who here struggles with public speaking? It's really hard. It's really difficult. Who loves public speaking? Raise your hand. Loves it? 1 right here? The quietest person in the room? All right, great. They're like, no, she ain't. So we got a couple of people. It's really difficult. And that's what the survey always said. Public speaking was number 1. You know what number 2 was? Don't say sharks. Don't say, well, fundraising would seem appropriate to the workshop, but it wasn't. Close, but not really. Death. So if public speaking is your biggest fear and death is your second biggest fear, that means the survey was telling us you would rather be the person in the box than the person giving the eulogy. That makes no sense to me. Now, what was 3 and what was 4? A lot of the usual suspects. Snakes, spiders. What did you say? Flying? No, that wasn't on there. That's not bad. No. Flying with sharks? Who said that? No. But usually it was a mix. Drowning, snakes, spiders, sharks. Whoever said sharks before, they didn't make the list. I apologize. But number 5 was interesting. Say it. Number 5. Asking for money. Wow. And so what is it that we have to do in the nonprofit sector a lot? Ask for money, and occasionally we have to speak to people. So we're constantly doing what most people find is 2 of their biggest fears. And if you happen to see a spider on the floor while you're speaking and asking for money, you're just done. But that was really interesting. So when people ask me, how hard is it to fundraise? I used to work for a Major League Baseball player who's now in the Hall of Fame. And I go, we're trying to put you in the Hall of Fame. At the time, he's in the Hall of Fame now, for hitting a ball 3 times out of 10. That gets you in the Hall of Fame. That gets you in Cooperstown. I go, I would be in the fundraising Hall of Fame. Is there one, by the way? Anybody know? Vince, can you check on that for me? I would be in the fundraising Hall of Fame if I got one yes for every 20. So we live with middle school dance rejection constantly in our career. And it's difficult. And so we're constantly in this work that we do, constantly facing a lot of fears. And so that's why when we come to like a workshop like this, where again, board development is difficult. It is. We know that working with boards can have its good days and have its really rough days. I've seen friendships lost over board engagement. I've seen organizations be really hurt because of bad boards. I've seen great organizational leaders leave because of bad expectations or no help from their board. So we know this work is hard. So I try to get you guys laughing a little bit at the beginning as we go into the work, because I want you to know that you can also see some enjoyment in this, and because it's also fun just to laugh at human nature. Oh, who? Yeah, no, I'm gonna wait. No, I was kidding. No big deal. We're all busy. All right, so these are the things we have to talk about and we're going to get into. Let's talk about some of the myths. Everyone's got an idea what makes the best board. Everyone has an organization. They're like, gosh, they got the best board ever. Are you taking a picture of me or the slide? Oh, the slide? Okay, well, I'll get up. So here's some of the myths that we talk about. Only corporate level leaders work in some kind of business organization. Only wealthy people. I know people that have been on boards are like, we only need to find people that get money. No, we don't. That doesn't make any sense. Someone from a specific geographical area. I've lived all over this country. Again, I'm in the witness protection program. And every time I run an organization, somebody eventually says, we need somebody from this area of town. I was in Tampa, Florida. Oh, we need somebody from South Tampa. I'm like, what's special about South Tampa compared to North Tampa? They're like, oh, they have the best people there. I'm like, oh, I live in North Tampa. Why didn't somebody tell me? So I've been all over the place, and there's usually an area of town that people say they want people to be from. An expert in a particular field, a subject matter expert. I've helped out and consulted with organizational groups that were in cancer research or medicine of some kind. And they're like, we only want doctors on our board. I'm like, why? They don't have a lot of time, do they? Boards require a lot of time, a lot of engagement. So if you just want people that don't have a lot of time on your hands, who's going to show up to any of your events? So let's think about these things. A local celebrity or influencer, whether it's a newscaster, a radio program person, somebody that's made it in the movies or in music. Everyone's like, they're from our town, let's go after them. A politician or government leader that add credibility to the organization. These are just kind of myths that people think. Who should we find? Instead of saying, let's find people with a connection to our work, instead of finding people, say, let's find people that have the opportunity and the time to engage, we look at some of these superficial things because, again, we just don't know. Or we've seen some other groups that might have a couple of these people and we get a little envious. Like, oh, they got that person. They're good. They are good. But we might not know. You talk to that leader, and that leader might tell you a different story. Yeah, they seem good, but they're high maintenance. Because we talk about everything like it's a relationship, don't we? Oh, they just don't ever shut up, or they constantly bug me. And so we don't know the other side of it. So we got to understand that these are myths. It's not that anybody on this list wouldn't be good for you, but you have to find the things that really matter, and we'll talk about what some of those things are. Who's ever worked on a board and they've had somebody on the board quit? You never really knew why. They just said, look, this isn't for me anymore. It's just, I see a lot of hands doing this. It's okay to go full extension. If you have an elbow industry, I understand. But there's a lot of people that quit for a lot of reasons. And some of these reasons are up here. They were only asked to use their name. People don't like that. They weren't given anything to do. Believe it or not, board members are kind of a lot like teenagers. You got to keep them busy. They had no real influence or decision-making power. The reason I asked a question about term limits earlier is because a lot of groups that have new board members find it really hard to find their voice on a board when there's been people there for 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, because they get tired of hearing, well, that's not the way we do things here. Oh, a lot of people agreed with that. Wow. So, look at some of the other things. They were subject to too many dog and pony shows, too much sizzle, no steak. We like to see programmatic work. People like to see where their money is going. and not given a clear direction or clarity about how much time was involved. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things we're going to talk about is really understanding how much time is really involved. Am I finding the people that really have the opportunity to engage with what we're doing? So those are all the reasons why people quit. These are all the things that we expect board members to do. We don't talk about this when we recruit them because this seems like a lot, right? But look at some of these things. Look at some of these things and say, are you doing a lot of these things now? More than 2/3 of the room is on a board right now. More than half the room is on 2 or more boards. Look at all the things that you're doing keeping you busy. Does this seem about right? A lot of head shaking. All the things that they have you doing. You weren't told you were going to do all these things, but you're doing a lot of these things. So you got to stay involved in a lot of ways. Because if you really break it out, it's a lot of work. Volunteering can be exhausting, right? Yeah. So let's talk about the 5 things you need to be doing, because this is everything. Let's talk about what are the 5 essential things you need to be doing. Because you got to take any one big group of thing and filter it down to the top things. And so when you're looking at evaluating your board, if you're looking at what do we need as an organization, you got to pare it down a little bit. You got to really, we always say you got to crawl before you walk. Well, this is the crawl. Clear expectations. You got to know going in. I don't recruit anybody for any one of my organizations, and I don't consult anyone to recruit unless their expectations are crystal clear. How many board meetings do you have a year? How many am I expected to go of that many? How many events do you have a year? What do I encourage you to come? Or what do I encourage you of how many of those to show up for? I've had to facilitate, like I said, 13 people leaving because they weren't meeting any of those expectations. Are they people that are going to deepen with a strong commitment to the organization and help others deepen their commitment to the work? Sometimes you don't have the right people. Have you cultivated your board experience? Is it fun? If you look around at a board table and it looks like a hostage negotiation, that is not a good sign. I've seen some board members, and all they needed was a newspaper in front of them, and it could have been a proof of life photo for the FBI. It's like, you need to be having some fun in this work. And do we celebrate our success, or do we just look to the future? Anybody had an event recently? An event where you raised some money or did something really big in the last 6 months? Anybody? How many? Raise your hand. Nice, thanks for the full extension. 1 person, 2, 3. Some people aren't sure if they were at an event. Too much champagne. Several people are now giving me the half hand. Okay. Some people, 1 person gave me the finger. Okay, anyway, I'll move on. We have events and we have things, and sometimes we forget to celebrate those successes because we look at what the next thing is. Because when we debrief those things, we're like, okay, we raised $40,000 at this event. Okay, that's great. What did we raise last year? I want to see that. What did we raise 2 years ago? And you're realizing you're not celebrating the success that you had. And then you're like, what went wrong? Who in a debrief session only talks about things that go wrong? Because we tend to default to what went wrong. Oh, the food wasn't as good. Oh, the venue wasn't the best. Oh, the service wasn't as best. Oh, so-and-so didn't show up. We have to understand that we have to take the time to celebrate success, because as fundraisers, and a lot of us do fundraising, we're always told we have to thank our donors, right? Got to thank our donors. Got to thank our sponsors. Does anybody thank the staff? Does anybody thank you? Who's been doing the work for a long time and realize they haven't been thanked? That's an unbelievable realization. So we have to learn to celebrate success. And I think the best way to do that is telling your board members, especially when ones don't show up. I like to be the person in the meeting. Well, for the 9 board members that showed up, I really appreciate you guys. For the rest, with a sort of good excuse, I don't. But we want to make sure we celebrate success. And it's something we don't do very well because we're always on to the next thing. So understanding that there's all these things that we do, there's these main things we need you to do. Now we got to start looking for the right people to do these. Because what you realize is, serving on a board, there's a lot of people on your board that are acting busy, but are they productive? There's a huge difference between busy and productive. Isn't there? We have to understand that. So knowing these are essential things when you're building your board. So let's talk about where to find the best people. Always in every single workshop, anytime I work with the group, they're like, where do we find good people? Ian, it's so hard to find good people. There's no dating app for board members, right? There's no Tinder for boards. Like, swipe right if this looks like an engaged board member. Swipe left if they don't fundraise. We don't do that. Some of you are laughing too hard because you're actually on those apps, and I appreciate that. But we don't do that. So where do we find people? How do we recruit people? Who's got volunteers that just never seem to go away? They've been there forever. Have we thought about asking some of them? You got people laughing too hard at that one. So, and they might not be the right people, but we do have people that volunteer that have just never been asked to be on a board. Who are those? Well, they don't say no because they don't want to commit, because they heard you had no term limits and they don't want to give up the rest of their life to be on your board. I got an answer for everything. They frequently come to your events. I'm always kind of enamored by organizations that say, oh, they're our best event person. They always get a table. They always fill a table. They always show up. I'm like, that's great. Do they have a passion for the mission? Do they have a connection to it? Oh, I've never asked them. That might be a good person to ask. Legacy or reoccurring donors. I've had organizations, I'll ask them, have you pulled your donor retention data? Are we giving year after year? Who do you have? And I'm like, can you pull the data on anyone who's given longer than 5 years? And they'll pull this long list of people. Okay, 10 years. And it's still not as long a list, but still pretty long a list. And of that list, is there anybody on there that you would consider for your board? And it just kind of clicks that they just like, oh, I never thought for me to ask some of these people. Because that's also a good place where you can start looking. How about groups that work at some of your favorite sponsors? We have a lot of great sponsors. Every organization I've ever worked for or anybody I've ever worked with, they always have a favorite sponsor that comes back year after year after year, and might be an opportunity to talk to somebody that works for that organization. Community members that represent the reason why your organization was founded. I work for a police foundation now. Wouldn't it probably behoove me in some positive way to have a former police officer on my board? Probably. So I have a great, amazing retired police captain that does an amazing job. So there's and a former sheriff. So there's people that I'm like, okay, if I want legitimacy to what I do, let me look for people that I'm looking to serve. And then recommendations from current board members. But I do caution people on this one, only because you don't want a board full of people that are just buddies. And then when one goes down, they all go down. So I had a couple of people involved in board recruitment before I got to my organization last year. Didn't realize how close friends they were. And so not too long ago, when the Masters was happening, the golf tournament in Augusta, Georgia, I'm like, where are these three guys? I didn't know they were that close to, and they all individually sent me text messages that they couldn't be there that day. But then I went on one of their Instagram and they're all drinking at the Masters. And I take a picture, a screenshot of the Instagram, and I send it to all of them like, this is an unexcused absence. Have fun, guys. But you have to understand, if it's just friends, you could get into that situation to where when one misses, they all miss because they vacation together or travel or do other things. Or family. It's always difficult, because if you've ever had not all boards get along, we'll just say that, and people can disagree. But when you disagree with somebody that also has a spouse on your board, well, guess what? Now you got two people mad at you. It's not just one. And I've had that situation before. I strongly discourage it, only because you don't want the disagreements to break up friendships or relationships. It can be difficult. So that's the where. Let's talk about the who and the why and the how. Connection to the mission is always my favorite. Always my favorite. I've worked in youth development. I've worked in education. I run a police foundation now, so law enforcement, and I've worked in mental health and wellness. And so when I had people with strong connections to the mission, they were usually my best board members because they were passionate about the work. And there's always other organizations they can go. There's not just one mental health organization out there. There's not just one youth development organization out there. There's several. So you have to craft your board experience around making them feel that they're a part of what you do. Capacity to give. What do you think this means? How much money? Do they have the capacity to give something? Did I give an amount? No, just capacity to give. Sometimes the most disrespectful thing you can do in fundraising is not ask somebody for money. I'll give you an example. Anybody ever been to church where they didn't pass somebody the collection plate? You're having a rough month, we'll go around you. It's very few and far between. So think about it. I've worked for organizations where they're like, well, this board member they're a parent of somebody in the organization. We're getting ready to raise money for a capital campaign. I don't think they have any money. I'm like, you got to ask. And they were fully willing to do something, and the person had no idea they're willing to do it. So you always got to ask, what's the capacity to give? Because a lot of organizations have an expectation of fundraising or giving to be on your board. And we'll get more into that as well. Let's talk about recruitment continued. These are some of the things that board members can provide in their fundraising and development. In-kind services and donations, influence the others to give, get their workplace to sponsor. All these things work for fundraising. We want to make sure they're all there. Did I just put capacity to give in both places? Well, there you go. I believe in it that much. In-kind services, who helps out an organization with stuff? That's all in-kind services, printing, food, anything. There's organizations that can help people out with stuff. Those are always great ones to have on your board as well. Influences others. Isn't there always somebody in every community that when they ask you for money, it's hard to say no? There always is. And the best way that I've raised money my whole career, and I've only worked for organizations with small budgets. All my organizations have been $500,000 to $2 million. Never any big hospital foundation, never any big university, always small money organizations. And every single one of them, the best way to fundraise was to get somebody to say, hey, this is why I give. Would you want to join us? They never gave an amount. It's not like an 80s TV show where you're buying a used car and you write a number down on a sticky note and you slide it across the door. That's not how you ask for money. So we have to understand that there's lots of ways for board members to give. And I'm sure with all the board members in this room that you give in lots of different ways. Let's talk about recruiting, which is some of the hardest things you can do as a board when we got to find some new people. We got to think really quick. Let's take a step back. Recruiting board members, keep in mind, skills can be earned, but passion is super important. If they're passionate about youth development, education, if they're passionate about cancer research, if they're passionate about helping families, whatever it is, make sure that that's there, because you can always start there. And then my other favorite quote, outstanding people have one thing in common, an absolute sense of mission, which is really just another fancy way of saying the other one, if you think about it. So you want people that just want that unwavering mission, because those are the ones that are coachable. Those are the ones that you can train. Those are the ones that you can say, we need to start doing this because it's going to help our organization. Always frame it in terms of the organization. I don't ever walk into a board and say, well, you could be doing this better, and you could be doing this better, and you could be doing this better, because that gets personal and insulting, and frankly, it's not the way you do business. But you can go into a group of people and say, if we can do this better as a group, then we can impact the people that we serve at a whole different level. So let's talk about when you're recruiting these people with passion, when you're recruiting these people with capacity to give, when you're recruiting these people who are able to support your organization in lots of different ways, what do they want back from you? Because it just can't be us buying them lunch, right? We need to lift up the hood a little bit and show them what's in there. Have them review expectations. What are giving requirements? What are engagement requirements? Let's look at the financials. Let's show them where you're at financially. Maybe the bylaws. A list of current board members and how long some of them have been serving. If they see that somebody's been serving since the Reagan administration, they might be a little worried. Have them meet other people. Don't hide your difficult board members. Have you ever wanted to try to introduce people from your board and you just told the person that's the most difficult on your board not to show up that day? Have them meet some people. Make sure it's a good mix, especially if it's somebody that somebody already on your board has suggested. Because they get along with that person doesn't mean they're going to get along with these other 8 people. So always have them meet some people. See if there's synergy. See if, if I was only in rooms where they didn't laugh at my jokes, I would stop doing these things. Thank you, whoever laughed at that. Yes, you're now in my will. Have them tour facility, check things out, meet staff. That's always a good one. We have passionate staff, don't we? We have passionate volunteers. Have them meet some of those people. That's always a great way to recruit people. So when I talk about it, that first one, review expectations, this is what I want to talk about. I mentioned it earlier. I have every single one of my board members sign an expectation sheet. Now, it's not a legal document. It's not notarized. It's more or less a non-binding resolution, but it's an acknowledgement that there's expectations that we expect them to do. I can't sue them when they don't do it. I can only encourage them to do it or encourage them that this isn't no longer the place for them. So let's look at what those expectations are. And this is actually word for word what's in these documents. I understand. This is the board member signing this, that there are 5 primary responsibilities of a board member: governance, fundraising, financial oversight, all those things I mentioned a few slides back, strategic planning, and to actively promote the organization. They understand that those are their primary things. I also understand this. I'll do everything to support the work of the president or CEO, executive director, and staff, but I will not, you see which words are underlined here, will not become involved in the management of the day-to-day operations. Sometimes you have to really spell it out for people. I've had board members in the past that get super involved in the day-to-day, and they don't do anything that they need to do as a board member. And I have to remind them, you hired me to run the day-to-day. You joined the board to do those other things. But sometimes organizations get flipped upside down, and we have board members that get a little too involved in what you do. They read one thing and they say, you should be doing that. They see something in an other organization, they say, you should be doing that at your event. So you got to make sure they understand that. In terms of giving, because this is always the hardest, expectation of giving, you have to understand it, you have to lay that out. Any new board member needs to know there's going to be an expectation. So you got to talk about the responsibilities to personally support and actively fundraise for the organization. That's just part of the job. We can't expect the executive director or the director, whoever it is, to do all the magic. They need your help. Board members are the influencers in the organization. So do you have a give or get policy? Do you have a mandatory give policy? I've worked in organizations with all of those. I worked in organizations with nothing, and they realized they needed something. You can always start somewhere. That's why there's a question mark and it's highlighted. What is that minimum? Is it $100? Is it $500? What does it scale up to? The bigger the organization, sometimes the bigger the give. Those super large foundations that you hear about for hospitals, for community foundations, for universities, sometimes those are large numbers. But what's the right number for you? I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that there is a number for you, and what is it? Because it's really great for people to understand that everyone's met a certain expectation when you're working with a group of people. Because the most frustrating thing of being on a board is looking at other people and not understanding what their purpose is there too. Like, I don't see them at the events. I haven't seen them show up to a meeting. Are they giving any money? I don't know. Should I ask the executive director? I'm not sure. Can I? I'm a board member. I'll ask him anyway. So we have to understand that there's definitely a place for this, but you got to figure out what that is for you. And it's a conversation for every organization of every size. I've seen small grassroots organizations with less than $100,000, and I've seen large organizations for under, $1 million to $2 million. Everyone needs the opportunity to have that. And you're like, okay, well, do you do it? Yeah, I do it. This is the exact document that I use for the Police Foundation. And believe it or not, the give or get for the Police Foundation is $5,000. But they've scaled up to that over time. The organization's been around 24 years. The first 12 years, there was no expectation. Then they raised it to $500 mandatory gift for about 5 years. Then they said we can do $1,000 a couple years later. Then about 2018, they say, let's go for $5,000. Let's make it a stretch goal. And let's try to give our people at least 2 to 3 years to hit that, but let's make it a goal. And then COVID happened, and it was really hard to hit that goal. But they said they want to, and I asked them, do you want to keep it? You don't have to keep it. I'm not saying that you have to keep it for us to be successful. I'm asking you, do you feel that's the right number for this group? And the group made that decision to keep it. So that's it. You got to find the right number for your group. But at the same time, if I give somebody expectations that I have of them, shouldn't they have some expectations of us as staff? Yes, they do. And so I have to sign a staff expectation form that I'm here for their success. As an organizational leader, it's my job to make sure board members are successful, even the ones I don't like. Nobody laughed at that? Geez, that's usually an applause line in some rooms. Yeah. Some board members, even the board members I don't get along with, I have to make sure they're successful. I'm here to ensure their success. I'm here to make sure they have a great board experience. I just am. Are we doing things that make sense? If I set you up for success, I just can't think because you live in a big house or a nice neighborhood or have a great job that you're going to be an amazing board member. Those aren't the qualifications of an amazing board member. Remember we talked about passion, connection to a mission, commitment, engagement. Those are the qualities of a great board member. So you got to be able to set them up for success. And I think when I have expectations of a board, it's really easier. It's easier for them to sign a document knowing that I'm signing it as well. And I'm sending them a copy of what I'm here to do for them. So now you're a team, right? The number one reason why development directors leave nonprofits and the number one reason executive directors leave nonprofits is they don't feel they're in partnership with their board. Number one reason. They don't feel it's a partnership. There's a divide there, and this is a great way to ease that divide. So why are board members so important to an organization? Because they have 3 superpowers. Persuasion, recommendation, and referral. For those of you that need an acronym that are CAT people, yes, that spells PER. That's what you laugh at? Really? That's the one? So, persuasion, recommendation, referral. Think of all the things that you do. Who in here, when somebody moved to the area or went somewhere, you asked somebody for a recommendation to sell your house, needed a realtor? Who in here got a recommendation for a doctor, a dentist? Who in here got a recommendation for a hairstylist? Obviously not me, but some other people have. Who is here has persuaded someone to do something, referred somebody, or recommended something in the last 48 hours? Anybody? Raise your hand. Yes. This is our superpower. Because when we're getting somebody to understand what we do for our organization, we're definitely trying to persuade them that what we do is so great. The biggest thing I see in organizations and communities that I go into is they always say, well, that organization over here, they got all the good people. I'm like, they're not better than us. Our mission is more powerful. I'm like, everyone has, what is there, 1.5 million nonprofits out there? I don't care who you ask, Google, Surrey, Alexa, it's going to be 1.5, 1.6. Don't they all have pretty good mission statements? Over 12 million people out there working in nonprofits, 12 to 13 million full-time nonprofit staff in the United States right now. Don't most of them believe in their mission? Yes. So that's not it. You're not convincing somebody you're better than them. You're convincing them the impact that your organization has. That's the difference. I worked in youth development. Lots of great youth development organizations out there. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Youth and Family Services, YMCAs, all these things out there. There's not one that I can say, well, I was better than all of them. I just had to convince people that the impact of my organization was better, and that's what drew people in. So you have to understand, as board members, these are your superpowers, not your checkbook. You don't see checkbook up there, do you? No, these things right here. Types of board fund development. We want fund development. I said fund development. It sounds like they're partying too much. Fund development is always something that board members talk about. When I took over each of the organizations that I worked with, they said, Ian, we need help developing funds. Like, what does that look like? We don't know. We've never been trained on that. Here's ways to do it. They're like, Ian, I'm not a fundraiser. I'm not a public speaker. Then they reminded me, hey, Ian, did you hear about this survey in the 80s and 90s, what people were most afraid of? And I'm like, yeah, I've heard it. I use it all the time. So they're like, how can we get involved? What makes it easy for us? I'm like, well, have you ever thought about hosting a private event? Have you ever thought about hosting people that we might consider as possible board members? You know, do you have access to influencers that I wouldn't have access to? I have lots of people that say, Ian, I'll set it up, but I'm not going to ask. That's fine. Get me through a door I can't get in on my own. That's amazing support for an executive director. Peer-to-peer campaigns. Who's ever done a Facebook fundraiser or given to a Facebook fundraiser or seen way too many Facebook fundraisers? Raise your hand. Almost everybody. That's a peer-to-peer fundraising thing. There's lots of platforms, lots of free platforms for you to do peer-to-peer. Sometimes it's easier to do it that way. Why? Anybody realize why those are so much easier than asking people? Yeah, you're not face-to-face. The rejection's a lot easier, isn't it? Hey. That way you see who your friends are and you can lay a guilt trip on those that don't give. So there's lots of ways, what I would call low barrier entry ways into something, really building up those fundraising muscles. People need to have opportunities to have some success before you can move them through. Because if you're looking at the superpowers of board members, whether it's persuasion, recommendation, or referral, here's what they're really helping you do: build trust. Because if you ever given money to somebody you didn't trust, maybe if it's after midnight and it's an infomercial, but if you really, truly ever giving somebody money you didn't trust, all of their board members do is they help pull your organization to a level where people trust what you tell them, trust the programming, trust the engagement, build loyalty. All of those things are what good board members help you do. Because people give to who they know, like, and trust. It's just the way it is. Now that you got these great people, engaged people, committed people, people with passion, people with purpose, you got to do something with them. Just having them say yes to joining your board is not where the dance stops. There's more songs to be played. Board transition is difficult for anybody because they might not have met a few people. I've had new board members come in ready to go, and then they run into that difficult board member that you hid from them for all those months you were recruiting them. And they're like, wait, what's this person doing? So talk about board onboarding. Got to provide support. And so they learned about the organization. Have they spent time, working with the staff member? Have they spent time working with the volunteer? Have you provided them descriptions of everything? Have you had a welcome and celebration? People like to be welcomed to the board. Was it a Facebook post, whether it's at a happy hour, whether it's at a lunch? Have you welcomed them to the organization? There's lots of free ways to do it, low-cost ways to do it, make them feel a part of the organization. Have you paired them with the current board member so they have a buddy? You always need a buddy, bless you. You always need a buddy when you're with the board. Somebody that just kind of helps you, kind of walks you through some of the details, some of the personalities. It's always a great way to do it. And then you always got to conduct new member check-ins for at least 6 months. At least 6 months. I had 2 board members start the month before I came on, and I started taking over their onboarding, and they were very grateful for that because they felt like they were thrown out into the water with no life preserver. So you got to make sure you're there for them. Then you got to keep checking in. Who's done a board evaluation or been involved in a board evaluation in the last 2 years where you just kind of assessed your needs and how things were going? Anybody? One? You did this? You didn't know you didn't know you were being evaluated? I mean, it's super important to do that. You got to do what we call a board self-assessment. You got to really look at what are some of the things that we're doing? Do they make sense for our organization? Are they scaring people away? Are they a big pain point for people? What are those things? Don't we need clarifications on expectations? I could have an expectation that everyone gives $500 every single year. Then after a year, I evaluate how many people did it. And if 2 people did it out of 15, maybe that's not the expectation for us. So that's how you evaluate. Maybe I look at, okay, why am I having a hard time bringing on new people? And then you talk to those new people. I'm like, well, we need term limits. We need to know exactly when we're going to start and stop something. What is that? So look at that. Identifying strengths and areas for improvement. We got a great board. They might all be good people, but do they have the skill set you need to grow? Is there a skill set you're missing? Find out what that is. These aren't negative things. These are all positive things. These are all things that you do as an organization to improve and get better. And so they're great ways to really get to know your group and really get to know what they want out of the experience. Engage them in all levels. Increase levels of their teamwork. All of these things happen. You could just do this on your own. Like, what are we missing, guys? Let's talk about that. What could we use to get better? Or how can we make this organization greater? What are those key components? And then you focus on those things. And then when you figure those out, you got to train each other on it. There is enough free stuff online to last a lifetime. Let's figure out what those things are. What do we need training on? Is it fundraising? Is it events? Is it board governance? What is it? And let's do something once a year. There's free webinars out there. There's free things on YouTube. You can just watch a 15-minute video and talk about it. Like, okay, that was interesting. That was on board governance. Should we do that? See what the group says. Shortly after new members are elected, have a training. Make them part of it so they feel part of it. Include fundraising tips every time you send stuff out. I always give little notes around events just to help people out. A great way to ask is this. You want to share our event, put it in your signature line for work. Let people know what your philanthropic interest is on your social media. You don't have to be too hardcore, banging people over the head to get them to buy a ticket or a raffle ticket or a table. It can be a soft ask. You can find ways to do that. And then offer check-ins with people just to make sure they feel good about it. The best practices involve all these things. This is just another way of saying some of the stuff we just said. Make it interactive, make it fun, have a buddy. All ways to do it. Make people feel like they're getting along. Incentivize participation. I tell people if they're 100% engagement in board meetings, I will sit them wherever they want to sit for the events, because sometimes that's all they care about is their seating chart or whatever it is. So that's what we do. There's ways to do it. And then we get to a point, then we get to a place, hopefully, as we close out our time here, where you're sitting there and you're like, some days I'm like, so it's just me and this board changing the world. And that's where we want to be. I want you looking in the mirror before you have a board meeting and being excited about it, not dreading it, not having to take a drink of something before you go. Really? You laughed at that? That seemed like more of a confession. But that's the point. All of these things, and we really talked about only 5 things. All of these things can make your board experience better, not just for you, but for the other people around you, and that's the point. All right, you got any questions? Vince, we got, 5 minutes left? 4 minutes? Something like that? What's that? Is it? I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm over? Oh, my goodness. All right, well, it's great that there's no questions. I didn't realize it. You can tell me. Thank you for not getting up. If anybody has any questions, I'll be around the next 2 days. Please feel free. There's all my information if you want to get hold of me. If you have an anonymous question. Yeah, I apologize for keeping you so long.